Let's get right into it. Number 10. The remote Italian island. Imagine you're taking a boat ride near Venice, enjoying the beautiful Italian scenery. You spot a small, peaceful-looking island in the distance. Trees swaying in the breeze, birds circling overhead. Looks like the perfect spot for a picnic. You might want to pack your lunch somewhere else, because you're looking at Poveglia, also known as the Island of Death. The soil you'd be sitting on for that picnic is estimated to be about 50% human ash. Half of what looks like ordinary dirt is actually the remains of over 100,000 people. Back in the 1300s, when the Black Death was turning Europe into one giant graveyard, Venice had a problem. They needed somewhere to put all the infected people, so they chose Poveglia. If you showed symptoms of the plague, you got a one-way ticket to this island, and by symptoms, I mean anything from a slight fever to a bad cough. Even if you weren't actually infected when you arrived, you probably would be soon, because they just kept cramming more and more sick people onto this tiny island. The bodies piled up so fast they couldn't bury them properly, so they started burning them, and burning them, and burning them, for centuries. Today, local fishermen avoid the island like the plague. They say if you get too close, you can still hear the screams of the dying carried on the wind. The island sits there to this day, looking perfectly normal from a distance. Just don't look too closely at the ground you're walking on. Number 9. The sweet-smelling neighborhood. Boston's North End today smells like fresh pasta and garlic bread. In 1919, this place smelled very different. January 15th, 1919. A massive tank of molasses explodes, 50 feet tall, holding 2.3 million gallons. A 15-foot-high wave of molasses moves at 35 miles per hour through the streets. The wave weighs 27 million pounds. It lifts a train right off its tracks. Buildings collapse like they were made of gingerbread. People and horses get picked up and tossed around. 21 people dead, 150 injured. Some victims found glued to the ground, others found days later, preserved like bugs in amber. The cleanup takes weeks. They use salt water to wash it away, sand to soak it up. For decades, on hot summer days, residents swore they could still smell a faint sweetness in the air. The company that owned the tank knew it was leaking. Their solution was to paint the tank brown so the leaks wouldn't show. Today, just a small plaque marks where it happened. Tourists walk by taking selfies. Little do they know a deadly wave of molasses once swept through here. Number 8. The Station Nightclub site. Drive through West Warwick, Rhode Island today, and you might pass right by this quiet memorial park. It looks peaceful now. Just some benches, crosses, and a garden. But 20 years ago, this was the site of one of the deadliest nightclub fires in U.S. history. On February 20th, 2003, the band Great White was playing at the Station Nightclub. Their pyrotechnics show looked cool for about 5 seconds. Then those sparks hit the soundproofing foam on the walls. That foam was basically solid gasoline. The fire spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Within 90 seconds, the entire club was engulfed in flames. That's less time than it takes to microwave a burrito. The main exit quickly became blocked as people rushed to escape. Some people got stuck in the doorway, creating a human traffic jam that trapped others inside. In just over 5 minutes, 100 people lost their lives. The building's footprint is still visible in the memorial's layout, a constant reminder of how a normal night out turned into a death trap. Number 7. A Wisconsin town surrounded by forest. Peshtigo, Wisconsin. On October 8, 1871, this small town became literal hell on earth. The sky turned blood red, the wind started howling, then a wall of flame over 100 feet high raced toward the town at 100 miles per hour. This wasn't your average forest fire. This was a firestorm so hot, it created its own weather system. The heat was so intense, it melted glass windows before the flames even reached them. The fire was so powerful, it created actual fire tornadoes, massive vortexes of fire that could lift whole houses. Some survivors reported seeing cows being picked up and thrown through the air like burning missiles. The nearby river was the only escape route, but the fire was so intense it boiled parts of the river. Some people who jumped in to escape were literally cooked alive. Others survived by repeatedly ducking under the water, coming up for air between waves of heat. When it was over, at least 1,500 people were dead. The craziest part is this happened on the exact same day as the Great Chicago Fire. But while everyone knows about Chicago, hardly anyone's heard of Peshtigo. Chicago lost about 300 people. Tragic, but nothing compared to Peshtigo's toll a few hours north. Number 6. The Mississippi River Bend. In 1865, a normal bend in the Mississippi River became the site of America's deadliest maritime disaster. It's a warm April night, and the steamboat Sultana is chugging along. The boat was built to hold 376 passengers, but someone had packed it with over 2,400 people. That's like trying to fit 3 football teams into your mom's minivan. The passengers were mostly Union soldiers, finally heading home after surviving Confederate prison camps. They'd made it through the Civil War, only to board what was basically a floating powder keg. The Sultana had a damaged boiler, but instead of fixing it properly, they went with the put-a-patch on it and hope for the best approach. At 2 a.m., the boilers exploded. The blast sent burning coal raining down on passengers. The wooden boat went up like a matchbox. Many survivors of the initial blast ended up drowning. The river was in flood stage, ice cold from spring thaw. About 1,800 people died that night. That's more than died on the Titanic. Yet this disaster barely made the news because John Wilkes Booth had just assassinated President Lincoln, and the nation's attention was elsewhere. Today, this bend in the river gives no hint of what happened. The Sultana's wreck is still down there, buried under 32 feet of mud. Number 5. The lake that suffocates. Imagine living in a small village in Cameroon. It's August 21st, 1986, and there's this beautiful blue lake nearby. Just another peaceful evening in paradise. Except Lake Nyos was hiding a deadly secret. This lake sits on top of a volcanic crater, and it was slowly filling up with CO2 gas. Think of it like a giant bottle of soda that someone's been shaking for years. And on that night in 1986, the cap finally popped off. The lake literally exploded, sending up a massive fountain of water 300 feet high. But the explosion also released a huge cloud of invisible CO2. CO2 is heavier than air, so this deadly cloud didn't float up into the sky. Instead, it rolled down the valleys like a ghost tsunami, silent, invisible, and moving at about 60 miles per hour. The people in the nearby villages just went to bed like any other night, except this time they were going to bed in what was becoming a giant gas chamber. The cloud killed nearly everything in its path: people, livestock, even insects. Rescuers found a scene straight out of a horror movie. People were lying exactly where they fell asleep, looking peaceful. The final death toll was 1,746 people, plus about 3,500 livestock. The lake still looks beautiful today, but now it's got giant pipes sticking out of it, slowly releasing the gas so this never happens again. Number 4. The Sampoong department store site. In 1995, this spot in Seoul, South Korea, was the scene of one of the deadliest building collapses in modern history. The Sampoong department store used to stand here, a masterclass in how not to build something. The owners decided they needed a 5th floor, so they just slapped one on top like it was a game of Jenga. Then they added heavy air conditioning units on the roof, because what a structurally compromised building needs is more weight on top. The building was literally screaming for help. Cracks were appearing, the walls were groaning, but instead of evacuating, the owners kept the store open. They even had their executives secretly move their offices out of the building. On June 29, 1995, the building finally had enough. The whole thing came down during peak shopping hours, with over 1,500 people inside. 502 people didn't make it out. That's more deaths than some natural disasters. Today you'd never know by looking at it. A luxury apartment complex stands there now, filled with residents who probably have no idea they're living where hundreds of people lost their lives due to pure greed. Number 3. The rebuilt Texas school. In 1937, this school in East Texas became the site of the worst school disaster in American history. The school was sitting on top of one of the richest oil fields in America. The school board decided to tap into the free gas under the school instead of paying for natural gas. They started siphoning off the raw, unprocessed natural gas from a nearby oil company's line. The problem is, raw natural gas doesn't have a smell. The rotten egg smell we know today was added to commercial gas later, specifically because of this disaster. On March 18, 1937, a shop teacher flipped an electric switch. The spark ignited all the gas that had been silently collecting in the school's crawlspace. The explosion was so powerful it could be felt 4 miles away. The entire building lifted off its foundation and then collapsed. Out of the 500 students and 40 teachers in the building, 295 died. The school board had decided to use the free gas to save $300 a month. That's about $5,700 in today's money. 295 lives lost to save the equivalent of a used car. Number 2. The rebuilt town of Johnstown. Johnstown, Pennsylvania looks like a normal American town. Shops, houses, people going about their day. In 1889, this entire place was wiped off the map by a wall of water 3 stories high. A town that drowned because some rich guys wanted a private fishing lake. About 14 miles upstream, there was a fancy private lake owned by a bunch of millionaires who called themselves the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. Guys like Andrew Carnegie and Henry Clay Frick, basically the Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk of their time. They bought an old reservoir and fixed the dam that held it. They used shoddy materials and even blocked the spillway with screens to keep their expensive fish from escaping. On May 31st, 1889, after days of heavy rain, the dam gave out. 20 million tons of water crashed down the valley at 40 miles per hour. A liquid freight train headed straight for a town that had no idea it was coming. The wave hit Johnstown like a wet sledgehammer. 4 square miles of town vanished in minutes. When it was over, 2,209 people were dead. Not one of those rich guys faced a single criminal charge. They claimed it was an act of God and went back to their mansions. Number 1. The Triangle Shirtwaist factory site. Picture a beautiful old brick building on a college campus. Students walk through it every day going to class. Back in 1911, this was the Triangle Shirtwaist factory. On March 25th, a fire broke out on the 8th floor. Normally, you'd run for the exits, but the factory owners had locked most of the doors. They thought their workers, mostly young immigrant women, might steal scraps of cloth. When the fire started spreading, nearly 500 workers found themselves trapped. The fire department arrived, but their ladders only reached the 6th floor. The building was 10 stories tall. Desperate people started jumping from the windows. Witnesses below said it looked like it was raining people. 146 people lost their lives that day. Today, it's New York University's Brown Building. Students walk these same floors, having no idea about the horror that unfolded beneath their feet. The fire led to major workplace safety reforms. Those fire drills you do, the sprinkler systems, and the emergency exits you see everywhere, they exist because of what happened right here. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.